What's up, everyone? Today we're going to talk about how to swap the subframe of your Kawasaki ZZR600. And I mean, the only reason you'd want to do that is probably because you've crashed, usually on the right side of the machine, and the thing's been like butter. And it causes the rear end of the bike to either be twisted or bent. And you can tell that this one is on this machine. I went down on the right side. Actually, I low-sided left. And when it hit the ditch, it then rolled onto the right side. And so, it just pushes on all of this stuff. And when you get behind the bike, you can tell that it's just not quite straight. And in addition to that, you can come up front here and you can see this gap on this side of the seat, between the seat and the fuel cell, the fuel tank, is different than it is on the left side. So it's much tighter here and much looser on this side. And then if you come back here, you can tell also with the rear seat, I can't fit my finger underneath this gap between the tail and the seat very easily. But as we go to the other side, you can. You can just stick your finger right under it, at least right here. So it's just not right. And you could go and try to, bend this subframe back. But honestly, there's so many of these bikes out there. You've got the early Ninja ZX6Rs that are identical. The subframe's the same. That ran from like 98 to 02. And then they repopped them from 05 to 08. And they're just all over eBay. So I've got this one here. And, this came off of a machine. I got it from a guy in Florida. And it's perfectly straight, and he shipped it to my house for like 45 bucks. And honestly, I can't, like shipping and everything. So I can't mess around with this one too much before I've got, $45 in time in it. And, unfortunately, my old one is like powder coated, this candy red over silver. And I'm hoping it doesn't look too awful putting a factory silver one back on it. But I'm not gonna sweat it too much, because I'd rather the machine be mechanically perfect rather than aesthetically perfect. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So to get started, obviously you're gonna take your seat off, battery out and everything, battery tray out, tail light out. You're gonna have to disassemble the whole tail end of the bike. So let's get into that. All right, so let's start by taking the seats off. Okay, now that you've got the seats off, I'm gonna go ahead and take the handles off and pop the tail plastic off. One 5mm bolt here, and one here. These pop right off. Oh yeah. All right. All right, last one. Okay, the handles are off, and now I'm just gonna pop these two Phillips head screws out of the front here, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull the plastic off. Now, if I remember right, I haven't done this in a while, and your mileage may vary a little bit here because of whatever you've done with your undertail. In my case, I put this, fender eliminator on this bike a while back, and whenever I crashed, I actually blew out all of the hardware that was holding it on. So I've actually just got this zip tie on here, and whenever I was on the side of the road, I just kind of stuck it back under here. But once I got back to like the trailer and everything, but this happened in Tennessee, we found a zip tie and made sure it wouldn't fall off. So you may have your factory undertail under here. you may have something like this. In, you know, obviously in my situation, I'm gonna have to pop this off here just to get it out of the way. You may have to do something, you know, a little bit different. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. There's always a cutting tool somewhere, right? All right, cut my handy dandy zip tie off, so now I can just pop this out. Yeah, about like that. Be careful on your paint, you know, since we're always careful on paint. Now that I've got the undertail off of the machine, there is one thing you have to do. Your key that operates the mechanism that lets your back seat loose from the subframe is bolted into the undertail, or the undertail. It's bolted into the tail section of the motorcycle here, and it's very hard to access the screws that hold it in from the top. So what I usually do is just take the mechanism loose from the subframe and pull it all off at once. So back to the Phillips screwdriver. Okay, so now this is just gonna slide out with the tail section. You don't have to worry about, you know, trying to get in there and just taking it loose from the tail section itself. All right, and she's off. We're gonna have to take the fuel tank off, and all that is going to be are these. There's 4 5mm hex bolts. In addition to that, you got to take your petcock turn knob off, and of course, your fuel line. Got to remove your fuel line, and then it just lifts right off. It's not a big deal, but we're gonna have to do it. So I guess let's go ahead and do that. All right, this little guy just has a Phillips screw that holds it on. Slide it off. Oh, there's something else you want to pay attention to here. Make sure your fuel tank petcock is to the off position, because you know, if you're on reserve or if you're on, you're going to just drop fuel out of the bottom of the tank as soon as you start there, as soon as you pull your fuel line off. So ensure that you are in the off position. Okay, I took the fuel tank loose, the fuel line and everything, and it's starting to rain again, and I'm not sure how loud that's gonna be. So I'm going to take the fuel tank off, and I may have to wait it out again, which is kind of annoying, but you know, it's Indiana. This is kind of the norm for spring. Fuel tank's off. I'll probably just go ahead and take the battery out. Well, it's still raining, and I apologize if the audio sucks because of that. But I was thinking, I'm not going to remove the battery tray entirely, because, you know, all of this stuff, you know, the fuse panel and your ignition relays and everything are all soft mounted, you know, to the battery tray. And you don't have to take any of this apart. You can just, you know, unbolt the battery tray from the subframe and leave it lay on the rear tire. So that's what we're gonna do. I took the battery out mostly because it makes it easier. It's so easy to take out, you know, and you don't have that weight there. So yeah, we're not going to actually, you know, take all of this apart. We're simply going to loosen the battery tray from the subframe. And so then that means all you have to take off of the subframe is anything that is attached to the subframe. So, you know, all of your little connectors like this, your this electronic component here, this guy, you're gonna take the taillight off like we mentioned earlier, and this little bridge section did not come with my new subframe, so that's gonna need swapped over also. Now that the battery is out, I want to take the taillight and stuff off. So all that's going to be is you know, 3 10mm bolts All right, we got that. We're gonna undo our tail light and turn signals. I think there are washers on these also. At least mine has them on there. Alright. This is actually really broken. These are the cheap Chinese ones, and I've got these two giant ceramic resistors in there that are just floating around, and I can't believe this thing still works at all. Okay, so now I'm going to take the bridging, this little tail section mount off. That's off. Just gonna thumb these bolts in here so it's there and I don't have to worry about it. All right. Now that we've got that done, we can start taking loose the rest of the components that are attached to the subframe. I need a Phillips screwdriver here. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and put those bolts on this subframe so you know I don't lose them. Okay, we've got the tail light off and all this is off, removed from the subframe, and so now I'm just gonna loosen these 10mm bolts here. There are two here, and there are two on the very end of the bike. You can see this one here, and of course one on the other side. I think that's all, but I'll loosen them up and see. Now, one thing I noticed on my new subframe, thought was kind of funny, is the seller didn't include these hooks for your helmet. So I'm gonna have to take those off of this subframe and put them on that one. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of slap them on this other subframe, and once we're done with that, we're actually gonna undo the exhaust pipe and also remove the passenger foot pegs while the subframe is on the bike to make that nice and easy. And once we get that done, we're going to loosen the subframe and remove it. At this point, I've got the subframe bolted back onto the bike. I've got the passenger foot pegs on, and I don't have the exhaust. Whoa! Anyway, I don't need to show you how to put this back together. So I'm gonna go ahead and bolt, you know, the battery box back onto the subframe and everything, and get it buttoned up, get the fuel tank back on it, get the seats back on it. And what I want to do is, whenever all that's done, I want to look at the gaps between the fuel tank and the front seat, and then, you know, the gap between the rear seat and the tail cowl. And there you have it. She's all buttoned back up. Just, you know, obviously just put it back together in the reverse order in which you took it apart. Unfortunately, I'm not certain I gained any improvement in these body lines. So here's now I'll have to go back and look at the footage to really tell. But, you know, so here's this gap here that I was concerned about earlier. And then, of course, here's this gap. And we follow it around, you know, looking at the back of the bike. I'm just going to have to see, I guess. Yeah, I'm not certain I gained a lot. And, you know, as with respect to the Gixxer I did this on, it improved at 100%. But it had been crashed pretty hard on the right side. I bought it that way. This one I, you know, crashed myself. And, I mean, it wasn't that bad to begin with. And, you know, then again, looking at this bike, which is the you know, the OG, this is a 99, and you know, it suffers from a lot of the same issues. I mean, it has some body lines, and obviously it hasn't had the best life, but you know, I don't know. Maybe somebody else can chime in and you know, tell me if like these bikes are just so, you know, chintzy that this is just how it is. But this one looks pretty straight. No, it doesn't, does it? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm worried too much. Anyway, this is how you replace the subframe. Hopefully if yours is bent, it's really bent, and you won't be slightly disappointed as I am. But at any rate, best of luck on your project. Thanks for watching this video.